welcome to yet another episode of Photoshop Lightroom TV, episode 190. No, I'm just kidding. Welcome to another episode of Photoshop Lightroom TV. I'm your host, Marek Mularczyk, and this show is provided to you by SciTraining.co.uk, one of the UK's leading experts in Adobe certified training. Now, welcome to the windy episode of Photoshop Lightroom TV. This episode, I want to mainly talk about the Lightroom. Because quite often I get asked, okay, so what about Lightroom? Why should I use Lightroom as a photographer and not Photoshop or Bridge in conjunction with Photoshop? Now, there's a number of reasons why you would use Photoshop and not Lightroom, and why you would use Lightroom and not Photoshop or Bridge. Okay, one of the reasons would be the price. Lightroom is so much cheaper than Photoshop. It only costs about £200, where Photoshop costs £600, or more than £900 for the extended version. Another reason why with Photoshop, you can't really handle so many images as in Lightroom. Okay. Actually, I'm going to show you some features and I will describe them to you in Lightroom and in Photoshop. So let's have a look on that. We'll be back soon.
Okay, so here I am inside of Lightroom, and there's a couple of things we can do in here. First of all, Lightroom can manage loads of images at the same time. Now imagine opening these images I have in here as 65 images. Imagine opening 65 images inside of Photoshop with a JPEGs or even raw images. This would slow down the computer because Photoshop will load all these images into a memory. Now this is so much easier with Lightroom because you can load all these images in Lightroom. I can quickly preview them by double clicking on any image and then move between images really quickly and easily. Okay, but theoretically you could load these images into Photoshop as well. Now what else we have here? Now one of the features I love about Lightroom and what we don't have in Photoshop is that Lightroom remembers the history for every image. So I'm on this image here, and I'm going to move into Develop module, and then I'm going to show you the history in the Develop module. So I'm in Develop module here for this image, and I'll go to the left hand side here. I'll scroll down the left panel, and there's the history. Now there are only two steps in here, but notice that the image was imported on the 10th of September. This was a month ago, and that's when I applied this high contrast preset. Okay, so this is something from last month, and Lightroom still remembers that. Photoshop can do it. When you close your files within Photoshop, the history is gone. And another limitation of Photoshop is that Photoshop can only remember by default 20 steps in your history panel. Now you can increase that, but the higher you go, the more RAM memory you require from Photoshop. And as you know, Photoshop is heavy on memory. Okay, also I think the Lightroom is perfect for a photographer because you manage your images. Of course, there are many things you can't simply do with Lightroom, but you can do with Photoshop. So they all work nicely together. What you can do is you can easily open images from Lightroom in Photoshop by right-clicking on the image, going to Edit in Photoshop, or going to Photo menu and also Edit in Photoshop, or just using Control-E on Windows or Command-E on a Mac. Okay. Also exporting. Now you can export images with Bridge, and I'm going to show it to you in the next tutorial, but not that easy in Photoshop. In Lightroom, I can select all the images, Control-A on PC or Command-A on a Mac, and then I can quickly click on Export button. This will show me the export window when I can export the images with some of the one of the presets and with any of these settings here, really quickly and easily from within Lightroom. I'm just going to cancel that. Okay, there's even more to that, and I'm going to show you even more next week or in 2 weeks time. I just want to show you one more thing here within Lightroom, is the quick way of adding keywords. Now I know you can do it in Bridge as well, But to have Bridge, you need to purchase Photoshop or other Adobe product, because Bridge only ships with other products. So if you don't have Bridge, if you have Photoshop, or if you don't have Photoshop, then you can do it in Lightroom. I can select all these images and add some keywords really quickly in here. For example, I can add another keyword. Let's say I'm going to add London, which will be London in Polish. I'll just click enter, and now this applies to all images, 65 images. If I go to Photo, Edit, select None to deselect images, and go back to the grid view, select this image here, and I can add that here. Let's say London. Okay. Now I'll jump to another image, and back here, this image now has the London keyword applied to it. Okay. Right. Let's go back to Studio.
Okay, welcome back. This was the quick tutorial, well, not a quick, in Lightroom, showing you why to use Lightroom and differences between Lightroom and Photoshop and Bridge. Now, I've got a tutorial for you that shows how to take the whole folder of images and quickly export it with any file format and any file format you want in Photoshop, using Photoshop and Bridge. So let's have a look on that, and we'll be back in a few minutes with the tip of the day.
Okay, here I am inside Adobe Bridge, and I'm going to export the whole folder of images using Bridge and Photoshop. I'm in this folder here, and from the bottom left corner I can see that there are 32 images in here. I'm going to select them all, so just select one image, and I can press Ctrl A on PC or Command A on a Mac to select all the images. And 32 images are selected, and they're 13.8 megabytes. So they're definitely too big to be emailed. Let's say I want to email them all. I will need to resize them. Okay, and I'm going to show you how to quickly resize all images using Bridge and Photoshop. Okay, so in Bridge, I could go to Tools and then Photoshop and Image Processor. Image Processor will process all the images. I'm going to launch Image Processor. This launches inside Photoshop, and this will take a few seconds to load. When it loads, I'm going to follow the steps. There are 3 steps here. The first step is select the images to process. In this case, it's processing images from Bridge. That's okay. 32 images I've got selected. Step number 2 is where do I want to save the images. In this case, I'm going to save them in different folder. So I'm going to select the folder. I'll go to my desktop, and I'll create a new folder on the desktop. I will call that email to export all the images into email folder. And I'll press OK. So it goes to desktop and email folder. Step number 3 is the file type. What file type do I want to use? I can use JPEG, PSD, or TIFF. I'll use JPEG in this case because these are JPEGs. I will make sure the convert to profile to sRGB is checked, because sRGB is the default color profile for computer screens, which means it's a default color profile for internet as well. So to make sure that my images look the same on every computer. For the quality, the maximum is actually 12, but I'm going to leave it on 10, which is really good quality. And I'm also going to resize the images, so check the resize to fit. I'm going to use 800 pixels by 800 pixels. Now when I saw it for the first time, I was like, hold on, I don't want my images to be square. No, they won't be square. What Photoshop does here is it's going to take the images, and depending on whether the images are landscape or portraits, it's going to take the longest side and resize it to 800 pixels. So if the image is landscape, it's going to be 800 pixels wide and about 600 or 530 pixels high. If the image is portrait, it's going to be 800 pixels high and about 530 or 600 pixels wide. I could also run some actions if I wanted to. Okay, in this case I don't want to run any actions. I'm just going to click run, and now Photoshop will open every image, resize it, save it, and close it. I'll run through all the images. If I have loads of images, I can just go grab a tea or coffee and come back a few minutes later. These images are not high resolution images, so it shouldn't take long. It should be done quite soon. It's done 6-7 images already. And look how much work Photoshop is doing here. It's opening every single image, it's resizing it, you can see that. It's also saving it and closing it and opening another image. It doesn't open all the images at the same time, it does one by one. That's how you can do it faster without loading all the images into RAM memory. And then it saves them into my location, which in this case is a desktop and a folder called email. And in just a minute I'm going to check the progress. I'm going to check the quality and the pixel dimensions of the images. They should be much smaller, and they also should be 800 pixels long. Okay, I think it's done. I'm going to minimize Photoshop, and I'll go to Bridge, then I'll navigate to desktop and email folder. I'm going to open email folder. There's a JPEG folder inside here. These are the images. Okay, 32 images. I'm going to select one of them, and if I go into the metadata panel, this image is 800 by 534. I'll check one of the portraits as well, maybe this one here, and it's 533 by 800 pixels. I'm also going to select all the images, and now they're 5.7 megabytes, so they could be easily emailed. And that's how you export the images. Just to remind you once again, Tools, Photoshop, and Image Processor. It also works in Photoshop CS4 and CS3. It's not a new feature in CS5. Okay, that's it for today.
Okay, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Now the tip of the day is in Photoshop this time. It also works with other Adobe applications. If you use any tool except for the text tool, and you want to quickly use the hand tool to move your design around, you can just press and hold the spacebar, and this temporarily accesses the hand tool so you can move the image around. Then when you release the mouse button, it goes back to the tool you were using. Of course, it only works if you zoomed in so your image is bigger than your workspace. So you can see the scroll bars on the side of the screen. Remember, this works with any tool except for the text tool, which makes sense because if you use the text tool, you just add in space when you press the spacebar. Okay, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed the Photoshop Lightroom TV. Next week, I've got a review of one of the lenses I use. I hope to see you next week. Bye bye.